I still feel that there's things that we've left out so far, so I've invited an old friend here, Guy Claxton, to come and talk to me so we can talk about some of them now. Guy here is kind of my mentor, because in
1997, I wrote the book.
He wrote a book called Harebrained Tortoise Mind. And almost all the thinking I've done about creativity since is based on that one book. Because you were suggesting that there's different speeds of thinking and that they are suitable for different tasks.
Yes, in order to solve problems, you need to use the right tools for the job.
Yes.
As in any kind of, if you're a carpenter or a plumber, you have to use the right tools for the job. And our thinking tools vary in all kinds of ways, but when I was writing that book, I was thinking that they vary in their speed. So there's some of the tools are really fast. You know, if you're having to respond very quickly, be very creative in the moment, like a tennis player or a cricket player, you don't have time to think. You have to respond split second, absolutely, faster than thought. Then there are the kind of logical, the court of law, the learned lecture kinds of things which operate at the speed of thought, limited by the way we're speaking now. You can't speed me up too much or I stop making sense. And then there are other kinds of thinking that are slower than thought. You can't slow thought down too much or it stops making sense. Other registers. And it's very important to get the right register for the right job. Different kinds of problems need different speeds. And I think what I was thinking when I wrote the book was our culture, in a way, has sort of forgotten about the two outer sets of speeds, the slow gear and the fast gear, if you like. And we try and do everything at the speed of thought. We try and put everything into that box.
And we assume that speed of thought is a good thing.
We assume that it's a good thing, and we assume that it's a ubiquitously good thing, that it's good. It's good for everything. It's like snake oil for the mind, if you like.
Right.
It
Whereas
works
if
for
you're
all
using
purposes.
the slower mode, what you call tortoise mind, you can deal with problems that you simply can't begin to solve if you're in a faster way of thinking.
Yeah, that's right. If you're in a court of law, the speed of thought works very well. It usually comes out with the right answer. But if you're writing poetry or devising a new scientific theory, a lot of that work, it turns out, is done not at the conscious, deliberate, articulate level. Einstein put it very well. He said, the words of the language only come into my creative process at a very late stage. The actual creativity itself is done through thinking slowly and through what Einstein called more or less clear images. So he's working in a different language. You could call it a language, but it's a visual language. And he said, and also a physical language. A language of physical promptings is important. And only right at the last minute, when he has to explain his thinking to other people, does it then have to get squeezed into the box of words, if you like.
Yes, that's so interesting, because the assumption is you've got to think fast. No one, during my entire education, which was a good English education in a prep school, public school, nobody ever said to me, it's okay on some subjects just to think about them and then let your unconscious do the work.
Did a teacher ever ask you a question and you said, it's a good question, sir, let me get back to you on that, right? I remember I must have been about 12 and I was sitting in a lesson, I remember it very clearly, and I was gazing out of the window and the teacher said, what are you doing, Claxton? And I said, I'm thinking, sir. He said, well, stop it.
Yes, I was.
He assumed that I was wasting my time.
Of course. I mean, you had to be Einstein to be able to sit there with your feet on your desk at Princeton University, and people think, oh, Einstein's working. Well, most of us do that. We were slacking.
Absolutely. Dream time. I mean, if you ask people when they get their best ideas, It's not when they're right up against the deadline, when they're, in a court of law or something like that. It's, when do you get your best ideas? Often when you're falling asleep, when you're walking the dog, when you're on
in the
loo,
shower.
in the shower,
And
when
then
you're not
something that you've
deliberately.
been chewing over, you've got to chew it over first.
Yeah.
And then you can leave it pretty much for your unconscious to suddenly present you with the answer.
It turns out it's often the case that, particularly with things like scientific theorizing, that you need to do a lot of hard work first. You need, as it were, to exhaust the harebrain, the wretched hare that's running around all the time. You have to run it to exhaustion.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then
you go.
And then, as it were, you say, "Okay, unconscious, over to you."
Yeah.
I think
you see, what I say in the book, my little book, which I know you've read.
Yeah.
What I say is you've got to get away from ordinary life, because I looked at some research which had done on architects. Mm-hmm. And what they discovered was the only difference between the creative ones and the uncreative ones is that the creative ones could play.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Then I read a book by a Dutch guy called Homo Ludens, Playing Man.
Yes.
And he said, if you're going to play, you have to separate play from ordinary life.
Yes, you have to create. I think you are, having read my book, you coined the phrase tortoise enclosures.
Yeah, that's right.
We have to protect space and time.
Yeah, that's right.
For the tortoise. Otherwise, the wretched hare just is bounding around all over the place.
And the trouble is keeping the hair up, because any kind of interruption disturbs the peace that you need just to sit there and play.
Yeah. And it's very easy. Creativity is a delicate flower. Why are we so luddite in education? Why do we resist having a slightly more sophisticated view of the mind, which embraces the need to not only just invite, but to cultivate playfulness of mind, the tolerance for making mistakes? Yeah, the example I was thinking of was a friend of mine, a wonderful primary school teacher, who has very subtle, clever ways of detoxifying the idea of making mistakes. 4-year-olds arrive in school already, some of them frightened of making mistakes.
Yes.
They've learned to be good little boys and good little girls, and they have to get everything right first time or they feel stupid.
Yeah, it's crippling.
So Becky, my friend Becky, talks to the kids about, she says there's different kinds of mistakes, There are smart mistakes, and then there are sloppy mistakes. A smart mistake was an idea you had based on the best information that you had at the time, and it just didn't turn out, but you learnt a lot from it. Sloppy mistake is you didn't bother. Now, for children, that's very liberating, the idea that there is it's almost like an oxymoron, the idea of a smart mistake. So then she's moved one stage further. She has a big display in her classroom, Mistake of the Week. And her children queue up to have their smart mistakes acknowledged as the smartest mistake of the week.
Very smart
That's
woman.
genius.
Isn't that?
It's genius.
But one of the curses, isn't it, is this idea that thinking quickly is always better than thinking slowly.
It's so this idea, again, it's very prevalent in business, the business world, which you, I think, know better than I do. That somehow or other, the kind of people we want around here are people who are decisive, right?
Yeah.
And if you allow or encourage a culture of speediness and decisiveness, that is, a lot of people don't realize that is stupid.
That's the word.
Literally stupid. You're stifling intelligence and creativity in your organization, because everybody thinks they have to be a clever dick, and whatever question, however complex, however novel, whatever question comes up, the smartest person in the room is the one who has the quickest answer.
Yes. Who
is slick.
Stupid.
Yeah.
What do they call them? They call them the articulate incompetence.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yes, they suffer from premature articulation.
That's a very good one. Thank you, Guy. Bless you for coming.
Cheers.
Enjoy our water. It's the very best GB News water.
Very good.
Only been used once.